Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood with Hegwood Law Group, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning. Welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Leslea Stock-Lopez. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you were with Star Group Wealth Management, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And today we're going to talk about building a financial plan and how critically important it is for caregivers. And
Yes.
so it's my understanding that you have a financial literacy type program, is that correct?
Well, I was part of the financial literacy program that the Alzheimer's Association recently released. And financial literacy is always important for all of my clients and especially for caregivers.
And so why specifically caregivers?
Right. So first, just to step back on my definition of caregiver, this would be an individual that's not paid. So we're talking about a spouse, a sibling, a son or daughter. And they are responsible not only for the physical care, but also the financial care of the individual. So when we're talking about this, it's really important that they have a really good grasp of money and finances and how they can be used to support the individual that they're taking care of. And so when we talk about financial literacy, that's really the core of it, is making sure that this individual has those skills because they're going to put those into place and making sure that the care is throughout the lifetime of the individual they're caring for.
I saw a number and it was astronomical of the number of unpaid caregivers that are actually doing caregiving in this country.
Yes.
And so how does caregiving impact finances?
Yes, it's quite significant. And I see three key areas that it really affects. And so the first is the out-of-pocket expenses, which is what you were alluding to. About 78% of caregivers have out-of-pocket expenses that they're not reimbursed for. That's a large amount. And if we're talking about an illness like Alzheimer's, then the amount is around $11,000 a year. But even without an Alzheimer's diagnosis or dementia, it's at least half of that. So still, $5,500 a year coming out of pocket can really have an impact to the caregiver. Then the second area is employment. So most caregivers have to pull back on hours, or they have to change jobs that have more flexible hours, or they have to quit completely. And of course, all three of those options have an impact to not only their current income, but their retirement income as well. And then last, it comes to the health area. So as a caregiver, it's exhausting. And so it can be very detrimental to the health of the caregiver. So they need to take care of themselves. But if they're, from a financial standpoint, if there is an illness, that can cause additional financial burden because not only do they have to take care of their health, but they're going to have someone else cover for them while they're recovering. So it does have a huge impact.
We're seeing in my office a lot more kids and other family members paying expenses.
Yes.
For some, for their loved ones that have declined. And so it's starting to become very more apparent because the cost of care has gotten so high.
Yes.
It's made it a lot more, difficult for people to get good caregiving. And so,
Right.
And I find that it's a little easier in my office to kind of talk about these things because I'm an elder law attorney. So we kind of dig into the nitty gritty and hit all those topics that most people don't want to talk about because we have to talk about them. But, a lot of people have a difficult time having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have some suggestions for maybe family members or caregivers to have these conversations with someone?
Right. Yes, I do. And it can be difficult, I think, in situations really specifically if it's a child that's taking care of an adult, because culturally we've been taught that it's not polite to talk about finances, right? You know, those aren't the things, and you certainly don't ask your parents about their finances. But when it comes to a caregiver situation, we really have to put those cultural norms behind us and think about what's best for the individual. So when you have those conversations, we want to start out a positive way. So an example might be, I respect you, and I understand that you want to have privacy, but in order for me to be the best caregiver I can be, I need to understand the resources that you have so that we can put a plan in place. And so if you're speaking from the heart, something like that seems to be quite genuine. Now, when there's a dementia component to it, it can be a bit difficult because the individual, has changed cognitively. So sometimes it's helpful to bring in a third party, like an estate planning attorney, an elder care attorney like yourself, a CPA, a financial advisor, who can encourage the individual to speak to their child or whoever the caregiver is and say, it's really this is the time that we need to start having those conversations with, your daughter, your son. And that may be a little bit of the push that they need to get started. And then making sure that the conversation, the approach to the conversation is done at a time when everyone's calm, there's not a lot of activity going on, and that it's just kind of a casual conversation, because it might take one or two or three or four even reminders to get them to where they need to be. And of course, the focus is always on the individual. And if you, like I said, if you come from the heart and you say, this is something that I want to do for you, and I want to know what your wishes are. So it's really all about understanding them and making sure that their life path is exactly what they're looking for. Yes.
I've had clients that have come in and done their planning, and they'll say, how do I get my mom or dad or grandparents in, because they need some planning as well. And so a lot of times you tell them, you just need to go brag about how good it felt to get it done. Just little things to kind of help, because it's so important for everyone to have a plan. And we start planning in my office from the time they come in at 18. That's how old they are, all the way up, because you just never know.
Yes.
What life has in store. So we always want to make sure that we're doing all the things, necessary to, to help them along. And so, but from your perspective as a financial advisor, what steps are needed to get started from your perspective?
Yes. So once you've had the conversation and they're willing to move to the next step, then kind of sitting down and starting to put all of those elements together. So we start out with the goal, and it's basically, what do you want mom or dad to have happen in the future? Most people want to stay at home. Some people say, hey, all of my friends have gone to, the Shady Hill Rest Home, and I really want to be there. Starting out with the goals that's important to them, it would be the first area. And of course, writing these down. And then we look at the resources that are available. And we're looking at pension, Social Security, IRAs, and other investment accounts that they can use to help supplement the goals and the income that's necessary. And this is also a really good time to start to consider some of the support services around the illness that the individual has. I can't speak for other groups, but I know the Alzheimer's Association has a litany of places that you can tap to help support income. If you're a veteran, there are services there, Social Security, etc. There's a lot of places that you can go. So that's the time when we start looking at pulling in all of those resources that we can put together. And so then we look at the monthly budget. And this is where we really put a sharp tip on that pencil to make sure that we've listed all of the expenses, but not only now, but in the future. So again, with Alzheimer's, the illness is progressive. It gets progressively worse, and the level of care is needed a greater level of care is needed. So what we want to do here is look at the budget that we have now and sort of anticipate where it will be in the future. And so when we put all of these things together, we can get a much better picture of the finances and where the dollars and cents are going to come to. Now, in our planning, we think that the legal aspect of it is critical, and that's something that you cannot deny. So we want to make sure there's power of attorneys and all of that medical powers and all of those things are in place as well, because we want to make sure that the caregiver has access to all of those, that they're the named person so they can take control when the individual becomes incapacitated. So that's really, really important for us. And so I know that a lot of folks look at that and they say, wow, that's a lot. That was not my background. I'm not really good with numbers. And so what I say is this is the time to build your care team. So work with your CPA, your financial advisor, your attorney, and make sure that all of those areas are covered and that the expertise of these individuals can help you put that total plan together.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that, because that's the way we operate in my office, so we want to work with the financial advisors, the CPA, and put all the things in place, because, you want to have good documents, but you also want to have them current and up to date.
Yes.
Laws have changed on the statutory dual power of attorneys every 2 years for the past, 6 or 8 years now. They keep tweaking them and doing different things with them. So then there's extra things that we add to ours that are crucial to helping with long-term care planning. And so I'm glad that that's something you mentioned, because I think sometimes people forget how important it is to get those documents in place. So we get the plan in place. So what kind of things do you do after that?
Right. So once the plan is put into place, then of course we put it into action and test it and make sure that what we have put together as far as the budget goes, there's no surprises. Oh, we forgot about this, or we find a new resource, making sure that we sort of test the plan in that capacity. From a planning standpoint, as far as a review, a minimum is every year. But when something significant happens, let's say the disease progresses or there's a change in diagnosis, then of course that's the time to go back in and make sure that everything is still in place. And we always want to visit who we have taking care of the individual and if that person is still able to do so. And then I think what's really critical is to have a backup plan. Because what happens when the caregiver is unable to provide that care? When my grandmother had her diagnosis, her sister was helping her. She fell very ill and passed away. So we had to come in. My father and I took over the caregiving responsibility for her. Luckily, we had a plan in place, but sometimes you don't have that opportunity if you don't think about it in advance. So I always recommend that we have a plan B backup. And then really for the caregiver, they need a break. It is an exhausting job to care for someone 24/7. And so there needs to be hours or days built into the plan, a time for them to go and maybe sit on a beach and read a book for a week and decompress and really recharge that battery. And so what are we going to do in that time when you're gone? All right, so we make arrangements to have the individual at a facility that will give excellent care for that week while you're gone, and then everyone benefits from that process. Yes.
Yes, getting respite, having other people help. One of my clients, I told her, I'm like, you look like you just need a nap,
Yes.
So I need you to sleep. So I need your child to stay for a few more hours, or wait till the caregiver that's there. I need you to go home and take a nap.
Yes.
That's what you can either go home and take a nap voluntarily, or your child's going to drive you around until you fall asleep like a baby. And you could tell she was very exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And so so for me, I've been a caregiver, so I've done that job. We've my grandparents were the people in my life that I helped take care of. And so it's really important for us to make sure, just like you, to make sure that all the things are in place. And so
Yes.
And so I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. So tell people how they can find you.
Yes. So my company again is Star Group Wealth Management, and we are in the West Chase area of Houston. And my email address is lsl@star-tx.com. And our phone number is 713-783-3400.
And
Can I add one more thing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I know all of this is overwhelming, and there is a guide that the Alzheimer's Association provides, regardless of the illness that the individual has as a caregiver. We have a guide called a Caregiver's Guide to Finance. And so that can be found at the Alzheimer's Association. The website is alz.org, and they can help you. And I think that that's a good starting place. And there's like a workbook that helps you walk through it.
Perfect. And so website, because I don't think you mentioned that.
Their website is ALZ. I'm sorry?
Your website.
Oh, okay. And there's information about the Alzheimer's Association on my website as well. As you can tell, that's a passion of mine because of my grandmother's illness. And so my website is www.star-tx.com.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.